Hey everyone, it's me, Stephanie Nietzsche, and today I have the pleasure of speaking to romance author Daphne Austin. Hey Daphne, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing really good. I'm really excited to be on here and talk to you. I've been gonna talk to you in forever, Stephanie. It's
It's
you know,
been years. You have been with me though early on when I first started my writing journey, which is
yes.
fabulous. You helped me out in so many ways, and it makes me so happy now to be able to speak to you about your work. So, isn't it funny how life works out sometimes, right? It's
It goes
crazy.
full circle so many
It
times.
does. Yeah, it comes full circle.
It
Now, where
does.
are you today? Let us know, what part of the world are you in?
So right now I am a full-time author. I was working at the public library,
Oh,
which
nice. Surrounded by
our
books all day.
yeah, oh, I loved it. I really did love working at the library. I love books, period. I just love books. I love reading books. I love writing books. I love everything about books. I love the way they smell. I love the way they feel in your hand. I mean, nothing about books that I don't like.
Exactly. Yep. Yep.
So right now I'm a full-time author. I do my entire book from cover to cover. I do have some dedicated beta readers and an editor that really goes to my church, but she's fantastic. So she literally catches anything and everything that I would never even think to catch. She's
That's great.
amazing.
I know because as we write our stories, no matter how many times we reread it and look it over, there's things that
Yeah,
our brain does
just
not
don't
catch
catch.
because we
Hmm.
know how it's supposed to go. And even though
Yeah,
it's written, there's a typo or, some kind of error, we just don't pick it up because our
we
brain
just don't
and our
see it.
eye reads it the way it's supposed to be. It's so funny. But now let's go back. Back to have you always been a reader? Let's start with that. Did you
Um,
always love to read books as a child?
I've always loved books. I became a really avid reader. The first book that I ever read that was like, not a picture book. It was called Marcy's Wedding, and it was just a teenage book, and it was so cute, and it was something that I just loved, and like it just sparked from there. And then I had a pastor's wife that was super into books, and I still have some of the books that she gave me to this day, and I got those when I was a young teenager, and that just did it. Like I have always loved books, and um
Did that
I
get you writing?
um, at 16, I had an idea for a book, and I just had one scene in my head, but it was this one scene that I really wanted to write. So I'd like just jotted down what the scene was. And one day I was like, I'm going to write that book. And I'm going to be honest, it took me almost 2 decades before I actually wrote the rough draft to what is now a Ranger for an Angel. But
Wow.
that one scene made me want to be an author. And I just everybody wants to be an author because you just love it. You love writing books, and you always have these. I'm very, very imaginative. And so I always have something going through my
Right. A story or some kind
yeah.
of scene
Yeah.
you want to keep on rolling with, right?
Exactly,
So it's
exactly. And so when I finally wrote the rough draft, I published it right away, which was such a bad idea because I didn't know. I really didn't know what I was doing. And I have learned so much in the last decade. Um,
right.
my books aren't even the same. Like if you read A Ranger for an Angel today and you had read Angel Ranger when I first published it as a rough draft, you wouldn't even know you were reading the same book. I
That
mean, it's
ha-
just,
that happens to the most famous
yeah,
authors. They say the same thing. They're that
you
you
wouldn't
can
even know.
see. But that's great
Mhm.
because you, even as yourself, the author can see and the readers can see how you've grown
Oh, it's
as an
massive
author.
growth.
And I
Yeah, I'm
think,
not even the same.
yeah, and you see, I think that's really the way it's supposed to be, right? In any
Absolutely.
profession, and especially writing, the growth, it's there. We see the changes. We see, the way we've written in the past and then how it just
Yes,
like evolved over time. It's
over time.
it's fascinating, and
Absolutely.
it's all written down. So it's not like you
Yeah.
have to think from memory, hey, my
No.
writing, back then. You actually have it in a book to read to yourself or for your family to see and for generations to come. how you've grown as an author. And I think that's
As a
fabulous
massively grown.
because it,
Like, I look at them now and I read them and I just cringe because 'cause I'm like, "Oh, I can't believe I did that." But I did,
but you
and
did. See,
I
that's the
did.
thing. If a writer doesn't put themselves out there with their work, because we're always going to have that doubt. Even you said you have an
Always.
editor
Mhm.
at church, she catches
Mhm.
everything. But
Everything.
sometimes there's still in the back of your mind must be that doubt. If you
Always.
didn't, if you, it doesn't even have to do with the editing. It could be, you know, did I, you know, do justice to the story?
Yes.
Did I
Are there a
fully
plot hole somewhere,
yes, is there a plot
Yes.
hole, something with times or dates? Did I, you know,
Yes.
something with the name, right? There's always going to be something.
And
And
it's massive with the dates because when I wrote, the first book, which is, A Georgia Princess for an Orphan, this book
ah, you hold
was
that up a little
written
bit. Let's see that.
oh, sorry.
Yes,
When
look
I
at that. That's
when I
beautiful.
wrote this book,
Oh, that's gorgeous,
I
Daphne.
I fell in love with the parents that I wrote the original series for. Loved them. They were just, especially like the book that I'm writing now. I realized this is the book, which is coming out in April, A Bride for a Half Breed. That particular book is where I absolutely fell in love with the parents. And I knew I wanted them to have their own story. So then when I went back to write their story, because I knew it had to be first, um, I had to, I use Aeon timeline because I have to keep up with the timeline. There's just no way I could keep up
Mm,
with all these dates, especially with the Civil War, because everything had to be historically accurate. It was massive. It was a
yes.
massive, massive amount of research that I had to do to write this story because it's important to me. I love history and I want the book to be historically accurate. And so it was hard. Keeping up with timelines is tough, and you're always like at one point, I went back and I almost panicked because I had read the date wrong. I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's like years." But I didn't get it wrong.
And I was going to ask you about research. How do you do the research for your romances, your historical romance?
Oh, yeah, a lot of times it's a lot of Google search, I'm not gonna lie. Google is amazing. What did we do before the internet? I mean, I'm just gonna be honest. I look at my books now, I'm like, "Well, no wonder they were bad. I didn't have this, and I didn't have that, and I didn't," there are so many tools that I have at my disposal now, I didn't have then.
Yes, that's great for
And the
writers. It makes it so much
Yes.
easier for us. Before, I think we had to go to the library,
Yeah, and you
right?
can, and your library obviously, I love libraries, I work there. Your library is a fantastic tool for getting information, but even it can't hold all the information the internet holds.
Yes, and it takes too much time because then you have to
Oh,
take
so
the
much
trip to the
time.
library. And then as you're doing the research, you might say, hey, now I need a book on so and so, like someone in history in
Yes.
the past, a famous
Yeah,
person in the past, because now that person has been added somehow or mentioned in your story. So it
exactly.
would have taken you even longer,
Oh,
right,
even
to
longer.
write all of these
I
books because you have to be correct. You cannot just make
You
these things
have
up
to
as you
be
go on
correct.
because there
No,
are some
no.
factual, you know,
Exactly. You want it to be as factual as possible. Now, when I'm writing Half Breed Bride, I totally made up an Indian tribe. Indian tribes are very, very protective of their tribe, and I didn't want to
mm,
offend anyone. And so, like, I had to totally make up a tribe, and even them, I still love the tribe. I mean, it's totally made up, but I love all people, and Native Americans are amazing. So
yes.
I really wanted to represent them right, but I didn't want to offend anybody. But that's about as far as I go trying to deviate away from history. I mean, it would have to be a reason to deviate. When I wrote like General Sherman in A Georgia Princess for an Orphan, it was very important to me to get his personality right. I wanted them to like for it to be like he stepped out, and just was doing his thing. So that was important to me. There's a lot of research that goes in, and that's not something that I could have just grabbed from the library.
Right.
Not quickly anyway.
Is the
So
library
yeah.
far from you or?
Oh, no, 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 no. It's just like you have to I don't wanna use, jargon. You have to interlibrary loan a lot of books. Sometimes, like, if we don't have it, you'd have to bring in a book from somewhere
Yes, you can do
else,
that
and
here too. Yep, yep,
yeah, which is great that you can do that, but that's time consuming because
yes,
it could take anywhere from 2 weeks to a month to get another book in, and if you're in a time crunch, then
yes.
and I'm totally always in a time crunch. I don't know why I do this to myself, but I'm really, really bad about giving myself bad deadlines.
Some people
Really
work better under, but some people work
I
better under
do
pressure.
tend to work better under pressure. I really and if I don't have a deadline to make myself push, I am a bad procrastinator, so I will just push it off and push it off.
Oh, okay.
So
And
I
then at the last minute, you got to do
then
everything.
at the last minute, I'm still under pressure anyway. So
One more point I wanted to just make about the library and doing research,
sure.
since it does take time while you're in the moment and you're feeling everything, to have to stop when you can't just say, all right, I'm going to go online now and check this because you're so in the moment. And then
Yes.
when you get that instant information back, it keeps you in the moment and it fuels you, right? For more.
Yes.
But if you have to
Exactly.
stop and you have to leave your house, it kills that moment. It takes
It's
something
that
away from,
vibe.
yeah, you lose
Absolutely.
the vibe, you lose the feeling because as writers, right, we are in that moment,
We're living
literally.
it right alongside of our characters.
Right? And then if we
Yeah.
gotta like move along to leave the house or go to the library, and then to find out, like you said, you have to order the book from another library because it's not in. Oh, right.
I
That,
love it.
oh my
Yeah,
God,
that's the worst. Yeah.
that's a real killer. Oh boy, forget
Yeah.
about it. But yeah,
Thank God for the internet. I mean, it's really massive. It's
yes,
a huge thing.
we
Even like I
really,
use Chat GPT. Like I would just ask. I loved Chat GPT. Like that is a massive tool that has changed my writing. I literally went into Chat GPT and said, okay, what would it look like for a seamstress shop in 1886? And it literally pulls it up for me and tells me what it's going to smell like, what it's going to look like, what
wow.
what it's going to sound like. And that's really helpful because I can't put myself there.
Yes.
I've never been in a seamstress shop in 1886. I have
You
no
weren't even alive
idea
in
what it's going
1986,
to
so
look
how
like.
could
I mean,
you
I
be?
can imagine it, but it's nice to have something to like, hey, this is what it
Yes,
would look like, you know?
to give you
So
that information.
anything like that, like I have tools now that were never at my disposal before.
Yes,
So
and it's really,
it was
really helpful.
it's such a massive help. So it's been a massive help.
So now tell us, how many books do you have out currently altogether published?
Currently I have two full novels and a novella. Whenever I wrote a Ranger Angel Ranger, I don't remember. Anyway, the first book that I published years ago that was a mess. Anyway, that book had a couple in it that had like their love story was going on at the same time, and I had people that were like, "I want this story." And so when I decided to go back and rewrite A Ranger for an Angel, I decided to go ahead and give the couple their own novella. And so
Right.
that was something that I decided, and I love that story. It turned out so good. Like I fell in love with that couple. They are hilarious. But it's so funny because they write themselves.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
the
It's like
characters,
magic. You
yes.
get to
It
that
was
certain point in the story and they start telling you what's going to happen instead of
exactly.
you leading the way. I
Yeah.
love
So
when it
many
gets to
times
that.
yeah, I'll think that it's going to go one way and this is the way I'm going with it. And then they're like, no, that's not how it's going to be. And I'm like, oh, so,
Right. They're telling you, they're like, I'm going to tell you how it's going to go. I'm going
yeah,
to tell you what's going to
exactly.
happen. And the ending, too, like you may have the ending in your mind. And then when you get there, or you see as the story is unfolding, you say to yourself, oh, well, how's that ending going to work in? I don't know, but I'm just going to roll with it and see. And it all like, it just like fits together.
It just fits together.
It's amazing.
And it's been like that, even like, for instance, I was writing on this book now, and there's a character that is actually going to be in the next series, like 4 books down.
Okay.
Anyway, that character has red hair. And it's so hilarious because he flowed right into what I'd already written, and I didn't even mean for that to happen. So, like, there are so many times things fit, and I'm like, huh. didn't
Right?
I didn't even know that I was gonna do that, but, like, they totally fit.
How does
Like,
that
it was
happen?
always supposed to be. I don't know.
That's amazing. That is really,
It's
really,
incredible.
yeah,
Yeah, it's incredible.
it is definitely a beautiful thing.
It is.
So now the title of that book that we were talking about, just so everyone knows, with the
Um,
couple,
the title that one is A Seamstress for a Lawyer,
a
and
seamstress for a lawyer. Oh my
for a
God, I
lawyer.
love it.
Yeah.
That
So
is
that
cute.
yeah, oh, they're such a funny couple. And like when I wrote them, like it was almost sad to me that they were a novella that I was just giving away. Not that I cared that I was giving it away for free, but because it was something that I knew that they had to sign up for my email list to get. And I
Ah,
wanted it in their hands because it was such a good book. So what I went and did, because I did want them to have it, if they, some people just don't want to sign up for email. And so I made it available to buy for like 99 cents so that way they could still get it if they didn't want to sign up for an email list because it's so good.
that
And
was
I really
smart.
wanted people to write it, to read it, but they can get it free if they want to go sign up for the email list. And so but it was a really cute story. It turned out way better than anything I thought it was going to do. And it was
That's
something
smart.
that I had tossed up the idea around, but you don't like a Georgia Princess for an Orphan, a Ranger for an Angel, and a half read for a Bride for a Half Read. Those are like sweeping sagas. Like there's so much going on. It's not just romance driving that story. And so any of those stories. And so I was a little nervous to write. I was a little nervous to write a seamstress for a lawyer because it really is just romance driving that story, but it is so hilarious to read their story. And you have all like at the same time that this story is happening, the other story was happening too. So you have some of it like mirroring, but in the
Mhm.
end it ended up being pretty interesting because you got to see it from their perspective, which was pretty cool because they all have their own voice, their own way of thinking. But I was nervous to write it because I just wanted to make sure it wasn't boring because whoever reads it had already read A Ranger for an Angel. And
Right.
at the end of A Ranger for an Angel, spoiler alert, they're going to get married. And so like,
Ah,
do you see what I'm saying? So
yeah.
like that was like that's the prologue. And so I was like, not prologue, epilogue. And so I was like, do I really want to write their story whenever everybody already knows that, they're going to get married? But evidently they did because they asked for it. So
Ah, huh. Well, that sounds like a really fun story. So that's available. So far, the two books that we talked about, they're available on Amazon.
all three. The Amazon does not have a seamstress for a lawyer. It just has the other two. The reason it doesn't have a seamstress for a lawyer is because in order to offer it on Amazon, it can't be offered for free anywhere else. And so
Ah,
because
I
I
see.
offer it for free on my website for signing up, I couldn't offer it on Amazon. But
I,
they could get it on Smashwords or Nook. Uh, they could get it in any other place except Amazon.
okay, okay. But that's because it sounds like a really fun story. So,
It was a very fun story. It was a fun story to write. Elizabeth and Eric were fire. They were amazing to write. They were so much fun.
and as far as their couple goes, without giving too much away, did they like, what was fun about their story? Did they like, uh, bang
So,
heads or?
oh, they were like Elizabeth is very independent, and she doesn't want to get married. She's from England, and in that time period, you kind of became your husband's property, and she had her
Mm,
own business. She was a seamstress, and that's what she loved. She flourished at it. And this was America. She didn't have to have a man. She had a business. She could
right,
take care of herself. And so, and Eric, like, he knows she's the one. Like, as soon as he meets her, he knows, and he is determined. Like, and he loves a good argument. So he is more than willing to argue his case,
right,
until
right.
she gives in. And like, their chemistry is just so amazing to
Oh, I
read. It
love
is so
that.
funny. Yeah,
That's
it
fun.
was
That
really
sounds
fun.
fun. That
It
sounds
was.
like
It
a lot
was
of fun
fun.
to read. And now the orphan story, that is your
Mhm.
most recent?
That is the first that I that one was published in January 1st. A Georgia Princess for an Orphan was released, and that was the first one that I actually published as a real author, not some
Oh, why do
picture.
you say that as a
well,
real?
I felt like whenever I actually published rough drafts as not a real author,
Oh,
so
it is, it is.
it felt like I really it was
Listen,
embarrassing.
I
Like
give you
really,
credit because you have to start somewhere.
yeah,
Because
and
if
I
you don't
did.
start, you're never gonna do it. And that's, I think, what
No.
holds so many writers back to
Mhm.
publish their work because they're so worried
They're
about,
afraid,
but yeah,
and
they're
it is
afraid.
scary. It's scary to, like, open yourself up and let people see the way your mind works,
Yeah.
and, it is scary. It's scary, and then when you put yourself out there and you get these terrible reviews and you're like, "Oh gosh." So, you pull them all off and you're like, "Okay, I just don't think I can do this."
Yeah,
So
but
I
you
did.
but you
I
can. You can.
you can, and you should.
I think,
You
yes.
should.
I think one of the most nerve-wracking things is when people that read your book, the first book. and
Mhm.
then maybe they get back to you and say, "Hey, I found a typo on page 10," or "Hey, this is," and then you cringe, like you were saying before,
Mhm.
and you go, "Oh my gosh." But you know what? Then as time passes, you start to get like a thicker skin
You do.
about it
And you don't
because
take it quite as personal as you did
yes,
before.
everything is so
Yeah.
like in the beginning, we want a ton of reviews and we
Mhm.
want all the reviews to be great and all those things that we dream about, everything that's
Yeah.
positive. But in reality, not every reader is going to love our story. It could be
Maybe
fabulous.
not.
The
It
story could be fabulous and have zero,
absolutely.
typos or errors or mistakes. But if it's just not for that reader, it's just not for that
It's
reader,
just not for that reader.
right?
And that was the thing that I had learned, like, I really got hammered by the Christian community, when I came out with my first books, because my books do have passion. They do have things that you don't read in a normal Christian romance book, but those were important things to me. I'm a very passionate person, and God made those emotions. And so when I pulled them all off and I decided to go back at to try it again after my kids grew up and I finished raising them, I was just so lost. I didn't know what to do. I was like, I really felt like God said, okay, this is the time. Go ahead and write again. And so when I decided to go back, I was like, I could either take out the passion or I could take out God. Well, taking out God for me is not possible. He's too much.
Mm,
He is too much a part of my everyday life. I can't do that. And so I was like, but I couldn't take the passion out either. So
it's part of the
it
story.
was part of my story, and it's healthy. I never go too far. I don't feel like I go too far. My villains are bad, and if when they read now, there was really no true villain besides the Civil War in a Princess Georgia Princess for an Orphan, but in A Ranger for an Angel, there are villains, and they are vile. They just are. So,
Ah.
um, that, but I don't feel like if I didn't write them as vile, they wouldn't be believable.
Right, and you wouldn't be doing the character justice
No, I
if
wouldn't be
you
doing them
couldn't
justice at
portray
all.
them as who they
Yes.
are. And then I
Yeah.
think that would definitely affect the story and how you are as you're writing it, how the story is written. That's not effective
Yes.
storytelling if it's not
Mm-mm.
genuine and authentic
Exactly.
because you're holding back. You have a story to
I'm
tell.
holding back. Yeah. And this
Yeah,
was my story, and this is how I wanted to tell it. And I thought, there are going, and this is going back to what we were saying. I'm sorry, I kind of I chase rabbits, but
yeah, no, that's fine. Go ahead.
whenever I decided to write again, and I thought, well, I can't take either of them out. I thought, this is just going to have to be who it is. This is what it is. There are so many great Christian authors out there. And if they want to read those types of romances, by all means, read those types of romances. But there were also people like myself that don't tend to read Christian romances because I want the passion. I read
Mm,
I read secular romance, but I just skip over the parts that I don't want to read because I want the passion and I want the draw and the excitement because let's face it, nothing gets our hearts fluttering better than a good romance. So,
right.
but
I
I was,
agree.
yeah. So whenever I decided to write, like that was super important to me. And so I thought it's okay if they don't want to read my book. It's okay if they don't like that style of writing. There are plenty of others out there that are really great writers. I love Laura France and Lori Wick. These are really great authors, but that's not my style.
Exactly, exactly. And that's not doing yourself justice either as a
No,
writer if you have to,
exactly.
yeah, not add certain things. And technically, we can't write for the reader because that's
No.
also not fair. We have
That's
to,
not us.
right?
That's not us. Yeah,
Exactly.
we can't write for the reader. I write the way I write, you write the way you write, and if they like it, they're going to read it. And if
Yes.
they and they're going to share it hopefully.
Yep. And
That's
that's how you find your audience.
Yes. And when I wrote too, like when I started writing, like there were stuff being in the library. I learned so much. Like, have, I don't know if you like fantasy, like young adult fantasy, but those books are literally works of art. Like they're stunning
Ah,
from cover to cover. They're gorgeous. And so when I started writing, that's what I wanted. When I started writing my book and I was done with it, I thought, I want this book to be so beautiful inside and outside. And so it was very important to me to learn how to make a cover that really stood out, how to make to format my book to where it really really looked beautiful. Um, those were important. And not only was that important, but I loved how those books tend to really suck you in to the first person POV, like the point of view. You literally feel like you're there with that in that person, like you're doing it. Whatever they're doing, you're doing it at the same time. So when I wrote, I don't know, and there could be out there, I don't know. I've read a lot of Christian authors, and I've never seen a Christian author write in first person POV. I just didn't, it's not
That's
there.
that's
But
interesting.
I wanted it because I felt
Mhm.
like I could really, really get my reader into that character's point of view. What were they feeling? I wanted my reader to feel that. And so I actually lost a friend over that. I'm not gonna lie.
No.
I
Oh,
did. I
no.
lost a friend over that. She was angry at me because I would not write the way Christian writers write. I was determined to write my own way. And she got mad. She unfriended me on Facebook.
Oh, no. I'm so sorry to hear
I
that.
did. But you get these people and they're just like, I don't know. But I just, that wasn't me. That's not what I wanted. And I know that my book is totally different from anything out there in the
Right.
Christian industry, but that's how I wanted it. If I feel like if you do the same thing everybody else does, what makes yours stand out?
Right, right. You're
So
so
I wanted it to stand out. I wanted it to be different. I didn't want it to be like anybody else's.
right. Yeah. And that's you, and that's how you find your readers. And
That's
how
yeah.
can you, we write, so of course we enjoy it while we're doing it. Sometimes it's frustrating and it's like you want to rip your hair out or throw the laptop across or snap the pencil in half. But
Absolutely.
if someone is guiding you and telling you, well, I don't like this about it, I don't like that about it, and you have to change it, I think that sucks all the enjoyment out of it.
It really does.
I want to give you this example. When I Before I self-published, I would go to writer groups, and one time I joined the library. The library would have writers that got together, and I think most of the writers were unpublished at the time, just like myself. And we all had to talk and introduce ourselves and give our story about, writing, how we started to write, whatever. And this one woman said she writes the story and her son-in-law looks at everything, and then he starts to like pick it apart and say, well, no, this wouldn't happen and that and this and that. And then she said she's working on the end right now, but he's not happy with the end. So that's what she's working on, changing the end.
To
This
make
was a
him
long time ago,
happy.
though. This was like maybe 10 years ago. And then, like I said, I forgot what I said at the time because we were allowed to all talk in a
Yeah.
group setting and say, and I never forget that. And that always stuck in my head because I felt this
That's sad.
woman is trying to write a story and it's never going to get out because she's fitting it to her son-in-law. But
Well,
that's not
and
going
that's
to be
not
what
her
it's,
story
that's yeah,
anymore. Yeah.
that's his story. So maybe he should write the story. So I don't know whatever happened with that. And I never saw her again at the library or anything like that. But that opened me up to writers that give their work for someone to read and critique, and then they work around the advice that's given. And I can't work like that.
I can't work like that.
I
I
can't do
and
the
I
story.
my better readers know they can make suggestions, and I'm not
Yes.
saying I won't take them to heart. I do, I listen. But if I don't feel like it is going to benefit my story or tell the story the way I want it told, I won't change it.
Right. How do you use that? And then yeah, and especially that fellow, he was changing the end. So
That's
I,
her story.
I
You can't
yeah,
do that.
I hope, yeah, maybe they should have wrote it together then if that was the case, right? They could have teamed
Right.
up and they could have both put their name on it, but she was writing it to fit him. And that's when I first, started really getting involved and saying I got to finish a book, and it really opened my eyes. So
That's
now
nice.
another
Yeah.
another question I want to ask you is, you said at 16, that's when you started writing
That's
your
no,
first story?
that's when I first wanted to write. And well, I say started. So maybe I did start a little bit, but like I didn't actually start writing the book. Like I just started writing down ideas. I don't know if that
Um,
makes like just different ideas, but it wasn't until I was in my early 30s that I started actually writing.
writing the
And
story.
so, I mean, when you're young, you got so much things going on. You want to go hang out with your friends, you want to go do this. And I got married and I had little kids, and you things get lost along the
Right.
way a little bit when you're
The
having.
writing goes on hold,
It
right?
does,
We
it
put the
does,
writing on
and
hold. We prioritize, and writing is never the priority at the
it's
time,
never the
especially when you're
priority at
raising
the
a
time
family.
when
But
you're raising a family.
did you ever say to yourself, one day I am going to have a physical book to hold in my hand. One day people are going to read my book. Did you ever say that to yourself and believe it, or was it just like a dream that you used to fantasize about? How did you feel at that time when you were working on that story?
So when I first started, I was so excited about my stories and I really did when the first time I held it in my hands. It was surreal. And at the time, like I said, they were rough drafts, but it was still really cool that I had wrote this book and this was my story. And at the time, I really was excited and I thought that it was going to be just so awesome and the people were just going to love my book and they were going to. And then I realized that it wasn't awesome and that they weren't going to read it and be thrilled with it because I had so much to do to it still.
Hmm.
But then whenever I came back this next time, I was determined. I did not care what it took, how long it took. And that's what I told the person that unfriended me. I said, "Look, I'm not trying to write like anyone else. I'm not trying to be anyone else. This is my writing." And she like hammered me and told me that I didn't she only read the first chapter, the prologue in the first chapter. She never read anything past that. But she had told me that I
Wow.
needed to go study the Civil War. I've studied and studied and studied the Civil War. It was a massive undertaking to learn all that I needed to learn and to incorporate all those aspects of the Civil
Right.
War into that story. And so when I finally told her, I was like, this is what I'm going to do. And it's going to be successful because I'm not going to stop until it
Right.
is. So, yes, I believe one day I'm going to be a world famous author. I believe one day my books are going to be alongside of other Christian romance authors like Lori Wick, Julie Lessman. I'm like, I got a bookshelf over here full
I
of
see
books.
you. Yeah.
I do love to read. And I want to be like my goal is to write a fiction, like a fantasy Christian romance, which is really hard to do and doesn't happen. I don't even know if there's one out there, but I'm going to write one because I just love
Wow.
fantasy.
That would be great if you would
So,
be the first.
yeah.
We
So
better
like
keep
that
that
is
under our hat there, Daphne.
yes. That is my ultimate goal. I mean, but right now I'm trying to get the like Riverview needs to get out first. So I'm working on that one first. But after I get through with Riverview, I'm totally going to write a
All
fantasy. And
right.
I already know what I
Well,
want it to be. I'm really excited about it. But
perfect. How
um,
far are you into Riverview now?
there's actually two series. Anyway,
I know
well,
it's a
one,
tough one.
yeah, I don't know what, yeah, how you say that. Anyway, the first one is Romancing Riverview, which is the Rollins story. It used to be Rollins of Riverview, but I changed it to Romancing Riverview because after the Rollins family, which is what we're on right now, I'm doing the Arabian Brides, and that's where they're going to Arabia. So it's
Oh, wow.
but bringing them back to Riverview. So that's why I had decided to change it. But there are like really and truly there's 5 books in each of the series. So there's quite a few. I have let's see.
Well, you have all these started, you mean? They're not
Well,
published.
I have rough drafts of I'm working on a rough draft now of a bride for a half breed, and then I don't have a draft yet for a hero for a Creole. That will happen later. And but that one's the next one after a bride for a half breed. And then after that, I have the rough draft for a preacher for a harlot.
Oh my
And
God, I
then
love that.
yeah,
That's a great title.
and
You might get
I
some flack maybe on that title, but
I probably will, but I really don't care. I mean, I love Jenny and Trevor. I can't wait to get to their story. They've always been one of my favorite couples of all time. But I do have the first book of the Arabian Brides as a rough draft. I have that one done, and then I have the other books planned out. So there's at least 10 books before I can get to my fantasy novel, but that's okay.
That's
I'll get
okay
there.
because you're gonna do it, and it's
I'm
great.
gonna do it.
It's
I'm
great to
not gonna stop until it's done.
wow. You keep on going, right? You keep on
Yeah.
going. So now you have all these rough drafts. So I guess you would consider yourself, if I had to ask, a plotter or a pantser. You're definitely a plotter, right?
Um,
Or no?
no. I am really, really okay. So I wasn't a plotter. Let's back up. I'm a plantster. I plan and I go
And
by my pants.
okay.
So like I do both. I'm a plantster. So like I used to not plan at all. Um, but I do now. Like when I first wrote the rough drafts, there was no planning. But now that I'm going back through, like now I have an outline. Now I have not does not mean I'm going to stick with the outline, but now I have an outline. I have character references. I have all these things that I try to keep track of. But no, I'm really kind of a hybrid.
Okay. Okay.
Sometimes, and if I have writer's block and I just can't think of what I want to do now, I literally just sit down and start writing. It doesn't matter what it is, and eventually, what's crazy is some of my best scenes come out that way. I
Really?
literally just sit down and just start typing whatever comes in my head.
So when you say writer's block and you can't write anything that has to do with your story, you just write through the writer's block.
I just write through the
You don't
writer's
allow
block.
it to block. So
Mm-mm.
when you write through the writer's block, are you writing on that store about that story that you were supposed
I'm
to be?
writing about the
Like,
story, and it can literally not even make any sense. Like it may not be something that I even planned to happen. For instance, I just wrote a scene in a half breed's bride, and I had writer's block, and I just couldn't figure out what I wanted to write, and it ended up being one of the most touching scenes. But
wow.
it was on the day of my dad's anniversary of his death. And I think I was
Mm,
processing through those emotions. And so whenever I wrote the scene, Lance, which we all know, Lance has he's alone. His parents have died. He was raised by this Christian couple. You'll learn more about that when you read, but um his parents died and he's alone. I mean, he's a half breed. He doesn't really fit anywhere. Now, Riverview doesn't see him that way, which is why I love Riverview. But Riverview doesn't see him that way, and they love him. And without Riverview, he really would have been lost. And so, like but he was dealing with a lot of grief before he joined the Rangers. Luke's the one that talked him into joining the Rangers, and he just shut his parents' door because like they died right away, like right behind each other. And so he shut their door, and he didn't want to go in that room because he missed them. You know, you miss that
mm,
person. Those, and he lost both. 2 days apart. And so when he's looking for something to wear to church because he hasn't been to church in a very long time. And he's been a ranger. You don't When you're out and being a Texas Ranger, you're not thinking about church. You're dealing with the assignments or whatever's happening at the time. And so he's like, okay, I'm going to go to church because that's where Katie's at. He wants to be where Katie's at. And so he's looking for his clothes. Like, I can't find my Sunday best. What did I do with them? He's like, am I such a heathen that I don't even have Sunday best anymore? Well, then he's like, well, he like looks across the hall. And he's like, well, Dad has Sunday best. I could go in there. And he's like, he doesn't want to, but he decides he's going to go in there. And he goes in there and he opens the door, and like he's expecting to see this tomb, but instead it's still alive. Like it's just waiting for his parents to come back.
ah,
And he can't bring himself to go to the armoire to actually open the doors to look into through his father's things. But as it was like it was like a step of healing for him in that moment. And when he goes to leave, he spies something out of the corner of his eye, and it's a laundry basket, and it's his mother's last load of laundry. And on the top is his Sunday best. That wasn't planned. That was not planned. That was writer's block. But I just wrote because that was what was in my heart. And it became such an important part of Lance's journey to healing. So,
that's a
like, it's
great
just,
scene. Oh
yeah,
my
it was a
gosh.
great scene. So, like, that was just whenever I have writer's block, I just sit and write. I just write whatever's in my heart, whatever's on my mind. And sometimes it's sad, sometimes it's happy, sometimes I don't it doesn't you never know what it's going to be, but I sit and just write.
Right.
If I never use it, if it gets tossed out, it didn't hurt anything, and most of the time when I write, it does push past the writer's block.
That's great. So you hear that, everybody?
Yeah.
I would say that there's not even such a thing then for you as writer's block. Maybe you just feel a
No.
little stuck and
Yeah.
you just like railroad right through it. I think that's great.
Yeah. Just start writing. It doesn't matter what it is, just write.
Yeah, just right. Just do what you love, which is right.
Yep.
Now, with the book that is out right now, tell me the title again.
A Ranger for an Angel is the one that I literally just released.
Okay.
So, and
And
that
you
one
have,
is not even in print yet. It will be in print by the 15th. So
oh,
it's
okay.
only an ebook, but the one that is out in print is A Georgia Princess for an Orphan. So I'm sorry, I'm a little far behind, but like I said, I keep doing these things to myself and I keep wanting everything to be perfect. And let's
Right.
face it, formatting is brutal.
Well, yeah, especially since you do everything yourself, right? You do
Yeah,
everything. You do the cover,
everything.
the
Yeah.
formatting.
Yes, the chapter art, which I love my chapter art. And so I decided that each chapter art was going to have like its own thing. Like I did magnolias for,
Oh, that's
I don't know if you can see it,
beautiful.
but yeah, I
You
did
can, yeah,
magnolias
that's
for A Georgia
gorgeous.
Princess for an Orphan. And so like roses is for A Ranger for an Angel. And so like every piece of it is is a lot of work.
Oh, but look at the result.
Yeah, but it's
It's,
important to me that it's beautiful.
and it is beautiful. Now, where can we get that book?
So you can get this book on Amazon, literally anywhere books are sold. It's there. Barnes and Noble. You can get it at your local library. Overdrive. You can get it off Overdrive if you wanted to just read it on your Kindle or your tablet, even your phone. Um, yeah, you can get it. You can get
It's out
the
there,
print
and
copy same places.
so
Yeah,
everybody could definitely get a copy of it. That's great.
absolutely.
And the book that you're working on right now that's going to be released, you said hopefully soon.
Yeah, that one. So I have A Ranger for an Angel is also available on ebook, Nook, wherever, Amazon, and then the one that we just talked about, which is A Bride for a Half Breed. That book will be out by the 1st of April, hopefully.
All right, right around the corner. And let me
It's
ask
right
you
around
this:
the corner.
what when you have your story in mind, when does the cover come into play?
I am so bad. So I don't know if that's bad, but like I design my characters before I even write them because I want to know what they look like.
Wow, very nice.
So when I
Nice.
write them, I'm literally describing the character I already created.
So you don't, some writers, when they envision their characters, sometimes the face is blurry, or sometimes they have a really clear, crisp picture of their characters. So would you say that's you? You have a
Yeah,
crisp,
I know what my character looks like. And so I don't I know right now it's taboo to mention AI, but I am a huge AI supporter. Now, I don't think it takes human creative. It can't. Humans have to be the creative driving factor in everything. And
right?
I use AI for my covers, but it is a massive undertaking. It's not like I can just plug something into AI and then I get to take it and run with it.
Right.
They're massive
Because
work.
you're still creating the cover.
I'm
You
still
pick the
creating.
hair color, you pick the shape of the
Uh,
face and the chin and the nose and the
Yeah, well, I tell it all of that. Well, then when I'm done with it, all I have is two characters separated. I have to create the background into two characters, and then I take them into Photoshop because you have to take it into Photoshop and you have to tweak it and because whenever you generate, like, I use Midjourney. Whenever you generate an image on Midjourney, the lighting's totally different on every single image you're using. And
mm,
so then I have to take it into Photoshop and I have to make them look like they belong together. And then after I get done putting the two characters as close as I can, because I have to pull them out of the image because it's got a background. There's always a background. But I pull them out of the backgrounds and I stick them on the background that I wanted them to be on. Then I have to take them back to AI and I take them into another program called Kling AI, which actually makes them a video. And I tell Kling AI what I want it to do. For instance, I wanted them to kiss. So it literally makes my characters, and the closer you get to the lighting, the closer you can get it to do what you're wanting it to do. So
ah,
it's a massive process to get it where you want it to be.
where
It's
you
not like
want
I
it to
can
be.
just generate a photo and run with it.
Right. It's all
It
your original thinking.
it's
It's
all
just
my original
the
thinking.
AI is just helping you move the process along.
Yes.
Just as
I
anything else would help you move the process
anything
along,
at
but
all.
it's
Yeah.
all you. It's all entirely your
All in
thinking.
it's all
You
my
create
creation.
everything. So now
Everything.
while we're on the subject of characters, how do you find the names for your characters? Is this like a difficulty, or do they just like come to you right away? You know what everybody's name is going to be, first and last name and all that. How do you go through that process?
So I'm gonna be honest. I am pretty fly by the seat of my pants. The only person, and she got a name change, was Sophia, and that's she's in A Georgia Princess for an Orphan. Um, she was Ruby, in the first rough drafts when she was a mom. Which, I mean, she's still a mom, but when that was her purpose, like I had named her Ruby. Well, then when I went and did research for A Georgia Princess for an Orphan, I ran across a wanted poster for a slave named Sophia Gordon. And I loved the name. And it ended up like making a massive twist in my story. Like it ended up being a massive thing that I just was inspiration from that wanted poster. And I realized it broke my heart that Sophia Gordon, like whenever it even talked about her, the guy that was looking for was like, she's barely tolerably pretty. And you're like, you're just being a jerk. Anyway, so, and they offered like $100 for her life, and it broke my heart. And I thought, how sad. I want her to have a better ending than that. And so like I ended up pulling that name and changing Ruby's name to Sophia, and it made I'm trying to think of the word. It made like a plot twist. It made a plot twist in my book that was not ever planned, but just wrote itself. Um, Normally they just come to me like Luke and Lee, and I have no idea where I came up with those names. They just came up, and I realized as I was going, like Seth and Sophia, they both started with S's. Luke and Leanne, they both started with L's. Elizabeth and
Right.
Eric, they both started with E's, and I'm like, I totally did not do that on purpose. It just happened.
So that's a
It's,
pattern for most of your books, or is this one story
no,
we're talking about?
that's where it stops with Eric and Elizabeth. But I realized that it was doing that. Now Lance and Katie, obviously, they're totally different
Right. But very
initials.
close. KL.
They're
It ends with
yeah,
a
okay,
KL.
yeah.
Katie
And
and
then you have
Luke or
Jenny
Lauren.
and Trevor. I mean, they both kind of look the same. So the J has a little hook there, but I don't know what I was doing there. But just that no, the names just um they just come to me. I knew I wanted Lance's name to because he is part Native American. I wanted it to be something that kind of would go along with that. That's why Lance got the
Right.
name he got. But when I wrote Katie, she ended up being a namesake, but that was never supposed to be. Like
Right.
she got wrote first before Caitlin Rollins, which was the in a Georgia, which was in A Georgia Princess for an Orphan. So like it was not supposed to be like that. It just kind of happened. It's funny they really do write themselves.
Yeah.
They really do.
Yeah.
But no, it's just whatever sounds good. And I just love, I think names are beautiful. And so it was important to me to write good names.
Yes. I could.
So that yeah, I think names just come that way. How did you get yours?
Oh, I seem to be following a T pattern. Torah, Tess. Um, Actually, with my first book, The Smoke Tree, Torah, my son has a friend, and I used to talk to the mom a lot, and she used to refer to, and I don't even think I ever told her this, but she used to refer to her daughter all the time as Torah. And I was always so taken by that name. And she would say, Torah this, Torah that. And I would say, Torah, that's a great, I just found that to be a great name. I
It's,
loved it, but
it's
I didn't
beautiful.
know what it was short for. And then one day, so then one day, the daughter was working at the supermarket, and her
Okay.
name tag, it's so funny you asked me this because now it's coming back to me. Her name tag said Victoria. And I said,
Oh,
that's her full,
her
birth
full
name,
name.
Victoria, and they call her Tora for sure. Because I'm used to people be called for Victoria like Vicky, maybe, right?
Yes, yes, but I love that they went with something totally different.
Yes,
That's
because it's not
beautiful.
Toria, it's Tora.
It's
And
Torah.
I just always found that name so fascinating. And when the mom used to talk about her daughter, and I would hear her say Tora, Tora, and it also reminds me, I guess, of the bull, right? What do they say?
Toro.
Toro, right? So the female version would be Tora. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just love that name so much, and I said that is going to be the character, and she doesn't even know that this is going to be the character from my first book. Yeah, Tora.
How amazing. Yeah, that's
So
awesome. I love it.
that's my character story. Thank you
Yep.
for asking, by the way. Now, if someone said to you, or maybe they have asked you already, what is the hardest part, the biggest struggle you find as a writer while writing the story? Is there anything that strikes you particularly hard that you say, "Wow, I wish I could get over this," or "No, not this again"?
Um, repetitive. I find myself sometimes being repetitive, which
Okay,
is very frustrating because like, and when I go back and read it, I'm like, you just said that, just not even.
5 minutes ago, they said, "Yeah, yeah,
So like that is my biggest frustration at the moment. And so like then obviously the thesaurus is a massive help for that. You're like, okay, let's use a different word. I've used acrid 100 times. It's probably better to go with tang or whatever. It's just whatever you're wanting because you don't want to use that same word over and over again or that same phrase or be cliche. Those
right,
are
right."
the things that really frustrate me about myself, and I try to stay away from them, but it's
It's
hard to do.
hard,
It's
especially
hard
when
to
you want
do.
to keep moving with the story, because
Yes,
then you have to sit there and find another word or another term, and that takes up time, and then you lose your flow,
and then you lose your flow. So
right?
I find that it's easier just to keep flowing with it, even if I already know that I already already wrote it just two
Right,
paragraphs back, but
and
and
go
then go
back to
back
it
and
after.
edit it.
And how about when you write? Do you write in order, or are the chapters in different spots, or you just maybe have paragraphs, dialogue here, or a whole chapter there? Like, how does that work for you?
So I try to write in order, but when like I was talking about writer's block, but if I hit writer's block, sometimes instead of just sitting and writing, what if I that's what I do if I absolutely just can't move on. Um, then I will just sit and write a whole scene that I actually want to write. Like, okay, I know this is coming up and I actually want to write this, so I'm just going to skip over and write that, and then we'll just sit it aside till I'm ready for it
Right, and get back to it. Yeah,
and
yeah,
get
yeah.
back to it. Yeah. So I do that too.
I like that. Yeah, I'm all over the place too. I don't
Yeah, I'm all over the place.
I
It's
don't
it's nice to try to write in order, but let's be real. Just
I think it's like kind of impossible, right?
it is impossible.
I mean, there must be writers out there that do it, but I think it's impossible. And I mean, it would really take the story a much longer time, I think, if you had to get everything in order.
Oh,
And then they
yeah.
must go back and say, "Oh, well, this will happen later." And they must put things and plug things in before and
Yes.
after, I would imagine, because it
Yes.
would be, like we said, impossible to write from beginning to end and then just be like,
Yes.
"Okay, I'm done." Well, something I found incredible about some writers is they, well, also readers, but some readers say they read the end of the book before they start the beginning because they want to know if they're going to be they want to know if they're going to want to find out
Oh,
what happened or
that
how it
hurts my
happened.
heart.
Did you ever hear that?
I have heard it. I can't do that. And that like there were some people that like, "Oh, don't tell me you don't do that." And I'm like,
No.
"No, I do not
I
do that."
Right. I like to save the end for last
Yes.
because for me personally, that's how everything, wraps up
Mhm.
nicely,
Yeah.
right?
It right.
Put a
Yes.
little bow on it and it's done. And then you're like, oh wow. Or oh, I didn't see that
Yes.
coming. But yeah, some readers read the end, which I thought was like incredible.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But to
I
each his
can't
own,
do
right?
that. However they want to read it is fine. I can't read it that way because I feel like I just ruined it for myself.
Right, right. Well, I do give them credit that they still, if they're interested in the end,
Yeah.
they still read the book.
Kudos
I
to
hope they're
them.
not disappointed though when they do it. But I just found that incredible and some that was different to me. That was something I never knew. I was taught to read a book from beginning to the end,
To the end.
and then you just like a movie, right?
No, I'm not gonna lie. I have gotten to a few parts in a book where I'm like just so anxious that I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can finish this book if this person dies, or
Right,
whatever. And so I'm like, so I'm
Yes,
supposed to
I've
rescue
done that
her there
too.
later. I'm not gonna lie.
I've done that. I flipped some pages, but I don't know. For me, that would just be a
That
ruiner.
I
I don't know.
couldn't run the end for myself. I have to have the end intact.
Yeah, and I just mention it because it's funny. When we read, we get a satisfaction from reading, and we get taken on a journey, and everyone has a different
Absolutely.
reading experience. So
Yes.
when I heard that, I just thought that was really interesting.
That is
Only because,
interesting.
like, I never even thought of it. I never even thought of, because kind of like a spoiler. It's like
No.
when you go to the movies with someone
Yeah.
who saw the movie already, or you're reading a book that someone read the book already, and they go, "Oh yeah, she dies at the end," and you're so mad
Yeah,
because
I'm like,
they,
"I didn't wanna know that."
right?
No.
Because they
I don't
spoiled
I'm
it.
not gonna lie, though. I'm not gonna lie. I have Onyx Storm sitting on my shelf. I I pre-ordered that book back in March of last year. I
Oh
can't bring
no,
myself to read it because 'cause I'm terrified.
because you're terrified of.
Yes, because the way that Iron Flame ended, oh my gosh, it ripped my
Oh,
heart out. I thought, "I don't know if I can read this again." She scarred me. I'm just gonna have to wait until she finishes the entire series. I just don't think I can do it.
oh, that's Rebecca
Yaros.
Yaros. I
Yes.
have not read any of her work, but I know her books are everywhere, and she
They're
has
amazing. Like, that
quite a
is
big
my favorite
following.
series. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's she did fantastic. I tried to get my mom to read it. Mom's like, Daph, there's a lot of words, bad words in here." Like, "Oh, I forgot, Mom." Like, I kinda skim over those, so I just don't pay attention, but then, like, when she brings it to me, I'm like, "Oh, yeah, don't read that, Mom."
No. Well, she definitely is a big author, Rebecca Yarros, that's
She
for sure.
is.
And I'm
It's
sure when
really
you
good.
read the book, I mean, I haven't read it, but
I don't
you'll,
know if I can read it. I think I'm just gonna leave it sitting on my shelf, brand new, in its all its glory. I'm just not gonna touch it until she's finished with the series
and that's,
because I just
oh,
can't
I
do
got, yeah,
it.
because you don't want to be left hanging. I could totally get
No,
that.
like, she just it was so funny, like, when I finished Iron Flame, I sent, one of the girls that I was working with at the library, and we're book buddies, and I thought she had finished it before me, and so I sent her
Oh,
this thing, and I go, "No." She said, "Stop! Don't tell me you're."
spoiler alert.
I know, I said, "I'm sorry, I
Sorry.
thought you were done." I said, "You're the one that got me into this in the first place. You are to blame."
Reading is addictive. I happen
It
to like
is.
Frida McFadden. I like her story. She has the psychological thrillers.
Oh, she was huge at the library. Everybody was, yeah.
Yeah, I have to put her books on reserve, and there's like a list, like a waiting list. So
Mhm.
I really do. Once I pick up one of her books, I am totally lost, and I love it. And it's so funny because I don't write psychological thrillers,
Isn't
but
that
yet
funny? Yeah.
I just love her stories
You
so
love
much.
hers. Yeah.
The Locked Door was the first one I read, and I just, the way her writing flows, it works for me. I like it. I don't know, but yeah,
She's a
another.
huge author. There are a lot of faithful
She is.
fans for
I think
Freedom
she's a
McFadden.
brain surgeon or something. She's some type of surgeon too, and
I
it's
don't, I
incredible.
need to look. I don't
That's her.
know.
That's her pen name, though. I think I recently just learned that Frida McFadden. I didn't read the story unless that was just like clickbait, but they did say Frida McFadden is not her real name, which I also found interesting. But then I didn't dive any deeper. But I'm almost positive she's a brain surgeon. But I don't know. But this was a fabulous conversation, Daphne. I am
Yes.
so glad that we got to speak. If you had to share one piece of advice from an aspiring writer, what would that be?
Well, I have two.
Okay.
One is don't be afraid to go out there and just write. Like we talked about earlier, nobody's going to always love your books. Um, but get out there and write. And no matter what anybody says, use the tools that work for you. So many times we get hammered for this or for that. Like I said, AI is a massive thing right now that everybody's dogging because they're afraid it's going to take over the human creative. It can't.
Right,
Not
right.
yet. I'm not saying that
Nothing.
eventually it won't, but right now it's not even possible for it to do that. But that's a massive tool that aspiring authors can use that will help you push past. Um,
Mm,
I don't have funds to hire someone to do my covers, to do my formatting, to edit. Those are massive, massive. I'm glad there are people that can, and I'm glad there are people that do. Don't let something so small as funds or inexperience stop you from being the best writer you can be.
I love that. That's wonderful advice. And it was such a pleasure to speak to you. And you have such a fabulous personality. And I love that you're so into your stories. And when you talk about them, when you were describing the characters and the ranger and the scene with the Sunday best, and I mean that is so touching. And it's when you talk about it, it seems like you're thinking about something that really happened in real life, and
I
not
am.
just a
Yeah.
character in a book. I love that. I
Yeah.
love it.
There was my
So,
daughter, and I don't know where you're trying to get off. There was another scene that like was that happened, and you read it. You read the A Georgia Princess for an Orphan. Well, you know the scene where he goes back and his mother's crying, and he had left and she thought he was gone. He was going off to war, and he goes back and like she's sitting there. She's just so heartbroken. Like I had an experience with my own daughter that like it shattered me. And I
mhm,
drew on that. I knew how she felt in that moment and I wanted to put it down. And so like yeah, I really do connect with my characters and most of the time, a lot of the times, not maybe most, but a lot of the times, um a lot of what I write is what I've already experienced for myself.
well, I love it. I think it's fabulous. And anyone who's watching, if you haven't read a Daphne Austin book, you're missing out. So definitely check it out. And I'm going to ask you to send me some links because it doesn't allow you to add them yourself. So if you would send me the links to your work, I am
Absolutely.
going to include them in the bottom. So everybody who's watching, you can get the books through the links that are going to be in the comments below. Daphne, thank you again. Oh my God, so much fun.
Thank
And
you.
I
Yeah.
definitely want to talk again when your next book
Yes.
is out.
Absolutely, absolutely, that would be awesome, so I'm looking forward to it. Maybe we could do it after I have, like, the book signing so you can find out how
Oh,
that goes.
yes.
I'm really nervous about those. I am
And
so antisocial.
we, we could, and that's so funny because you do not seem like it.
Yeah,
I feel like you have some great personality. Like
thank you.
you glow. So I think you're going to be fine, especially since the way you talk about your book so passionately and so realistically. That's what the in-person readers are going to be there for, your books and your stories. So I don't think you have a problem with that. I think that is going to be just fine. But I am going
Okay,
to be so interested in hearing about that too, how it went, what you learned with that, and what you did, and how the whole
perfect.
day went. So I am looking forward to that. And
Alright, well, thank you.
thank you. Thanks so much for joining me today. It was such a
And
pleasure, and we'll be talking soon. Daphne
sounds good.
Austin,
So
everybody. All right. Take care. Bye bye.
bye-bye.